I love what you've done with the place, Vanessa said, fumbling with a roll of glaze. Mike glanced over at her. She stood on the other side of the office, examining his preceding poster. Why Nebraska? She asked. When Mike didn't answer, Vanessa looked back at him. She watched him struggle to wrap the gaze around his injured arm. Need a hand with that? She asked. I'm fine, Mike said. Really? Mike looked down at the mess he was making with the gas that Vanessa had pulled from the kit that had been stashed in the bottom drawer of one of the filing cabinets. He was pretty sure a 2-year-old could have done a better job at wrapping his wound. He sighed. Clearly, this was not something he could do on his own. Flushing, Mike held out his arm towards Vanessa. She grinned and crossed on the desk, peering at the edge of the desk near the VCR. She glanced over and removed the tangled mess Mike had made in the gauze. Vanessa, Mike discovered, smelled very good. Was it her perfume? Her shampoo? Her lotion? Whatever it was nice. A combination of something flowery along with vanilla and apple. Vanessa began wrapping his arm efficiently. Her movements were quick and precise. Mike hoped she couldn't hear his heartbeat. It quickened when her cool, soft fingers brushed against his skin. While she worked, Vanessa started talking about a rapid-fire pace. I'm a certified EMT, you know. I did that first before I decided I'd rather be a cop. I don't do rescue runs anymore, but if your heart ever gives out, I'm the one you want to call, assuming you can still speak and hold the phone. Vanessa spoke so quickly that her words ran together. Mike had trouble keeping up. Her hands flew over his arm, too. She was acting almost manic. Impulsed by pretty much everything about this unexpected cop, Mike was mostly perplexed by her preliminary with the pizzeria, so he said, You seem to know your way around. Vanessa's finger jittered against the bandage, which was almost complete. She spoke quickly again. Freddy's on my beat. I like to stay well informed. She looked up and glazed around. I also loved this place when I was a kid. Vanessa tugged on the gauze, tightened it, really tightened it. Mike grunted. That should do it, Vanessa said. She patted his upper arm, then she pushed off the desk and stood. She extended a hand. Vanessa Shelley. She grinned. Might as well finish our meet cute. Mike blinked at Vanessa. She laughed. Just kidding, but seriously. She shoved her head forcefully forward. Let's see if we can do this. Vanessa Shelley, she repeated. Mike was a little reluctant to take her hand. She was such a powerhouse that he wouldn't have been surprised if he somehow lost his hand in the process of shaking hers. Mike took Vanessa's hand. She shook it twice, ferociously, as he said, Mike Schmidt. Pleasure to meet you, Mike, Vanessa said, squeezing his hand once before she let it go. She stepped back and looked up the intercom before returning her gaze at Mike's face. Unnervingly speaking in a total different tone of voice, Vanessa said, So, are you doing all right this evening, Mike? Gone was the breakneck, light chatter. Her tone was measured and low, all cop. Mike fidgeted as Vanessa's eyes narrowed. She seemed to be studying him with suspicion. What the hell? Not sure how to respond to an out-of-the-blue hard right turn. Mike could only say, What? Vanessa's eyes narrowed even more. A muscle on her strong jawline twitched. Are you all right? She repeated more slowly, as if speaking to a person with an IQ of 10. As in, are you okay? Are you cool? Is everything complacent? Mike crossed his arms, ignoring the pain in his left forearm. I know what all right means, he said. Vanessa's demeanor slipped again. She smiled brightly and began speaking quickly once more. Hey, that's great. Still talking fast, she dropped a smile as she continued. Did you know that your eyes are bloodshot and your pupils are dilated and your heart rate is through the roof? All this aside from the gush in your arm, which, let's be honest, is pretty dang bizarre. And you've been acting shifty and suspicious since the moment you opened the door. Did you know that too? Vanessa stared at Mike. Mike stared at Vanessa, open mouth. Vanessa put her hands on her utility belt. The letter creaked. Yes, she said with a mock tolerance. Mike sighed. What was the right way to go there? He couldn't tell her about his dream, obviously, but maybe he should be honest. To a point. It's been a really, really weird night, he said. Vanessa tapped at her blunt, unpolished nails at her baton. She eyed Mike for a long, disconcerting moment. Then someone visibly flipped a switch. Vanessa's cop mode deactivated. She flashed a wide-armed smile at Mike and said, errantly, Sounds like Freddy's. Mike was now totally mystified. What did she mean by that? Mike's befuddlement must have been shown in his face. Vanessa let out a short laugh and waved an arm to indicate the building around them. This place, it gets to people. Vanessa leaned towards Mike. That's why you're going to quit. The light tone was gone again. She was cop serious. Mike felt like he was being spun by a merry-go-round. What? Vanessa nodded twice. Her voice returned to cheerful springily. Oh yeah, your security hires never last long. It's like a fact. Mike had no idea what to make of that. The only thing he could think of say was maybe I'm different. Vanessa studied Mike. Her eyes darkened. Her face went still. She looked like she'd fallen down a deep, dark rabbit hole of introspection. Then the dark Vanessa clouds cleared. The sun came back up to her face. She beamed at Mike. So, have you met them yet? Met who? Them, Vanessa said. You know, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy. Mike gaped at her. Vanessa smiled at his cluelessness. She turned towards the door, then looked back at Mike and motioned for him to follow her. Come on, she said. The dining room was dim, but the lights were on. Strangely, when Vanessa had used the light switch near this archway, it had worked. Even in better light, though the dining room was still not one of Mike's favorite places. There was something haunting about the open space, the trash, the children's drawings, the expanse of crusty red stage curtains. Vanessa didn't seem to be bothered by any of the things that made Mike's skin crawl. She strolled confidently and purposely towards the stage. Mike trailed behind her, hanging back enough to scoot himself, but not far enough to look like a total coward. Attempting to distract himself from his nerves, Mike called to her. So, what are the other reasons? Vanessa glanced over her shoulder. Huh? You said I quit my job because this place will get to me, among other reasons, she reminded her. What reasons? Vanessa stopped. They reached the stage, and now she stood in front of the main stage. Mike slightly away from it, ending up the front of the small purple curtain stage. Vanessa faced Mike. She put her hands on her hips. Something flashed in her eyes. Annoyance? Challenge? You tell me, she said. Is this where you see yourself in 10 years? How about 20 years? Look down the line. What do you see? I mean, what do I know? Maybe the Phoenix are great Penn stations. 401k? Mike felt like he got a whiplash every time Vanessa spoke. Even though the pace of his interaction with her was giving him a headache, he laughed. Vanessa smiled. Didn't think so. She cocked her head. Add to the thing that those kids go missing. It felt like Vanessa had just kicked Mike in a solar plex. He struggled to get his next breath. What did you just say? He asked. Vanessa acted like she hadn't heard a question. Walking away from Mike, she stood to the wall and stood in front of the red Showtime button. Prepare to have your mind blown, Vanessa said. Vanessa hit the big red button. The instant she did, it felt like a dozen things happened at once. The first thing to get Mike's attention was a swish of the purple curtain that sprung apart, and Mike whelped and scuttled backward. The Pirate Fox animatronic was lunging forward out of the darkness. It shot to the edge of the stage, just inches from where Mike had just been standing. At the same time, the main curtain reel opened. The entire room was in the light of the psychedelic colors. Floodlights came on, shooting blinding streaks of color light towards the stage. Also, simultaneously, a rousing 80s rock song music began, pumping over the overhead speakers. Mike recognized it immediately. It was the same song he heard in the office when all hell was breaking loose. The deranged-looking fox that had nearly scared the pants off Michael started jerking around in symphonic dance. Mike was mesmerized by the convulsing motion. He especially couldn't take his eyes off the gleaming silver hook, which cut through the air over and over as the fox grated. When the fox looked down at Mike, or at least it seemed like the fox looked down at him, Mike finally moved. He stepped over to join Vanessa, now who stood centers on at the base of the main stage. Mike looked at the stage, and there they were. The rest of the characters Mike had seen in posters. The yellow chick with a cupcake. The blue bunny with the electric guitar. The brown bear with a bow tie and top hat. Mike pulled all the names on the toothy smile faces. Foxy, Chica, Bonnie, Freddy, rocking out. His gaze locked on the bopping and twirling animatronics. Mike couldn't decide whether to be entertained, repulsed, or sympathetic. The displays was once fantastic, disgusting, and sad. Maybe when they'd been in their heyday, bright and pristine in all their glory, the animatronics might have been fun to watch. Now, however, the flexible fur-covered robotic animals were filthy and molting. The fur, which was rotting, was rippled with holes, and through those holes, the metal endoskeletons beneath were rusting. Wires poked out in the gap of the fur, Animatronic's mechanisms made junky, glitchy, whirring noise. The bunny, electric guitar was fading, battered, and bent. This is, Mike tried, the best thing you ever seen in your life? Vanessa filled in. Mike shook his head. I was going to say deeply traumatic. Vanessa shot a look at Mike. He shrugged. Vanessa returned the shrug, and then he held out a hand. Want to dance? Mike stared at Vanessa's hand. Was she serious? He wasn't going to find out, because when he tried to work out the answer of her question, a burst of sparks exploded from Bonnie's guitar. At the same time, the music scuttered and screeched at a jarring stop. Red spot, hot, and bursting with bright colors spewing from the stage, as a few sizzling bits of heat hit the black and white checked dining room floor. The floodlights went out, and there was the swirling lights were gone. The curtains began to close. Agog, Mike couldn't take his eyes off the sudden rapid animatronics. His gaze went from one to the other, landing finally on Freddy. The curtains were sweeping together in front of the bear. As they did, Freddy's gaze seemed to shift. It appeared as if the bear was staring directly at Mike. The curtains finished closing. Mike shivered. Surely the animatronics couldn't have been making direct eye contact with Mike. They weren't that sentient, were they? Maybe next time, Vanessa said. Mike pulled his gaze from the closed curtains. He looked at Vanessa. She was expressionless. He couldn't read her. Vanessa headed towards the archway. Mike started to follow her, but he felt compelled to check the closed curtains again. They remained shut, but they swayed back and forth ever so slightly. Now that all the bright lights were out, the curtains were engulfed in shadows. Mike felt goosebumps on his arms. He rubbed them, and the gesture brought back when Vanessa had said earlier. Hurrying after Vanessa, who was still standing towards the lobby, Mike called out, You said some kids went missing. Vanessa stopped. She turned to look at Mike. She cocked her head if she found Mike interesting, or maybe dense. Sure, she said. Back in the 80s. What happened to them? Mike asked. Vanessa crossed her arm. It's big news. It was big news. She made a face that Mike couldn't interpret. It's why the place shut down, she explained. Mike felt like the floor underneath his feet was falling. What? Glancing at his face, Vanessa said, Wow, you really didn't do your homework, did you? She looked him up and down as if mock disapproval, or maybe her disapproval was real. She shook her head. And you're not wearing your badge, huh? Badge? What badge? Mike was pretty sure Vanessa had his face arranged an expression of total vivid ignorance more than pretty much anyone he had ever met. And that was saying a lot. Raising an eyebrow at him, the motion to him to follow her as they veered away from the arch and headed to the far side dining area. Skirming around the overturned table and pile of chairs, Vanessa laid him in the arcade. Their footsteps made little purring and tisking sounds as their feet scuffled over the dirty floor and kicked aside debris. The dry smell of dust mushroomed up around them. At the front edge of the arcade, the long, thick with dust glass counter and close display of discreet game prizes, mounds of moldy, limp, faded plush animals lay pathetically next to clusters of cracked plastic toys and crusty Freddy's parerias. Mike spied hats and mugs and pendants and rings and figurines and posters. When they reached the counter, Vanessa was behind it and slid open a cabinet door with a tap and whoosh. She reached into the geometry of waste prizes. Mike cringed as her fingers kicked up the dusty green spores and tossed aside what looked like a colorful dead baby animals. He wanted to tell her to stop what she was doing. It was too discomforting. Before Mike could speak, Vanessa pulled her hand out of the display. Got it, she said triumphantly. She held a red plastic tube filled with play badges. Mike took a step closer and looked at them. The plastic image reads, Freddy's Honorary Security. Vanessa plucked one of the badges from the tube and stepped towards the mic, swooning the vast that, in spite of everything that had happened tonight, he still wore. Vanessa pinned the badge to it. Vanessa patted Mike's shoulder and then she stepped back. Her gaze lifted his face and then dropped again. There, she said in a tone that came across oddly resigned. Now you're officially. The words sounded tiring, but her tone dropped to an end of the sentence. Vanessa seemed to be almost sad. Why? Mike opened his mouth to ask what was upsetting her, but before any words came out, a beep, beep, beep on his watch alarm cut through the moment, acted like the thrown blanket of a cold water, putting a harsh end to the night. Vanessa looked at her own watch. Mike knew it was read 6 a.m. What was his alarm was set for? Looks like our time is up, Vanessa said. She gave Mike a weirdly smothered smile. Come on, Let's go get your stuff. I'll walk you out. The storm had finally thrown into a towel. Flat, serene clouds lay supine over the pizzeria, as if spent and delayed. Between a narrow gash of clouds, a hint of the day's coming sign slid over the tops of distant trees, casting surreal golden lights over the wet black stain of the pizzeria parking lot's broken apslet. Mike's car door was protesting its required movement, which clunking groan when an engine droned, and the whistling of tires rolling through the shallow rain puddles turned Mike around. Vanessa's black and white Crusader rolled into a stop behind him. She lowered her window. "If you want," Vanessa called out, "I could check in from time to time. I know how lonely these nights can get." Mike kept his face neutral, but inward he cringed. He liked Vanessa, even though her freckled personality made his head spin. The last thing he needed, though, was her dropping in unannounced. It would totally mess up his nighttime routine. Mike realized Vanessa was watching him with a bromose quirk of the lips and her eyes. She spoke quickly. "I keep myself busy." Vanessa left her gaze on him for several long, excruciating seconds, then she shrugged. "Some friendly advice?" She narrowed her eyes. "Don't let this place get to you. Just do your job and you'll be fine." Vanessa's intense stare and the hesitance before the word fine landed on Mike's like a physical blow, and not a hard one, more like a warning tap. It shot across the bow. It felt like Vanessa's words were more threat than advice. Ignoring the tighten on his gut, Mike said lightly, "Sounds good." Vanessa gave Mike a friendly wave. There was the flip-flop again. Mike couldn't keep up. Then she raised her window. She looked straight ahead and drove off the parking lot. Mike watched the Crusader's tailgates for a couple seconds before getting in his car. As he started to close the door, which let out a loud, grinding sound, he thought he caught a hint of movement in the pizzeria. Mike leaned forward to look through his windshield. Unfortunately, he couldn't see much. Leaves and pine needles were stuck in the wet glass, and Mike's view of the restaurant was obscure. He hesitated if he considered whether he should get out of the car and go investigate. As quickly as Mike thought about checking out he dismissed the idea. The building was locked up tight. He was tired, and his arm hurt. Mike turned on the ignition 4 times. Finally, the car started. He cleared the windshield with the wiper, and he looked towards the shovel building again. It was still. Mike shrugged. His mind must have been just winding him up again.